Hi, my name is Jalen, and today I'm going to be walking you through some of the muscle models that we have here for the upcoming lab exam. With that, I just want to add a disclaimer that if anything that I say contradicts with what your professor has told you, or if I say something that is not on your objectives, or if I've missed something on your objectives, please verify it with your professor first. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into this video.
Okay, so to start us off today, we're going to look at the arm. And the very first thing we're going to want to do before identifying any muscles is going to be identifying bilateral symmetry. What I mean by bilateral symmetry is just identifying, is it a left or is it right? So with that, we know that this is going to be our posterior side of the arm according to anatomical position. And if we were to flip it around, this is going to be our anterior side of the arm, again, according to anatomical position. And so we know with that information that this has to be our left arm. With that, we can go ahead and start identifying our muscles. Starting up top, this muscle right here is going to be our supraspinatus. Inferior to that a little bit is going to be this muscle right here, our infraspinatus. And a little below that right here is going to be our teres minor. Going to our anterior side, we can see this right here. This is going to be our subscapularis. Now, all four of those muscles serve the same function, which is to say they all stabilize the shoulder. They also are the four muscles you need to know that make up your rotator cuff. Moving on from that, back to our more posterior side, we can see this muscle right here. Now this is going to be the deltoid, and its functions are to flex, extend, and abduct the arm. Let's go ahead and remove the deltoid. Moving on for that, we're going to want to identify our teres major, which is going to be this muscle right here. The function is going to be to extend the arm. Next, we're going to go a bit more anterior right here. We're going to find our coracobrachialis. Now, the function of the coracobrachialis is going to be to flex the arm. We're also going to find our brachialis, and its function is going to be to flex the elbow, and that's going to be this muscle right here. We can also see the brachialis from this side, and if we were to remove these muscles, we can also see our brachialis here. Let's go ahead and put these back for now. Moving on from the brachialis, we're actually going to look to our biceps brachii, and that's going to be these muscles right here. With the biceps brachii, their function is going to be to basically flex the elbow and supinate the forearm. It also has two distinct heads. We're going to have our short head on this side and our long head on this side. Again, short head right here, long head right there. Let's go ahead and take off the biceps brachii. Next, we're going to look at our triceps brachii. And bi meaning two, so we have a short and long head, and tricep meaning three for tri, we're going to identify three different muscles here in this group. We're going to have our triceps brachii lateral head, triceps brachii long head, and our triceps brachii medial head. Now, all those muscles serve the same function to extend the elbow. Next, we're going to look for our pronator teres, and we're going to go right here, more anterior. This muscle right here is going to be our pronator teres. And if we were to take off these muscles or reflect them, we can see it continue on a bit farther. Now, the function of the pronator teres, as I'm sure you might be able to guess, is going to be to pronate the forearm. Next, we're going to look for our brachioradialis. So our brachioradialis is actually going to be this muscle right here. And a few helpful hints for some of these muscles is to really pay attention to the name. If we see brachioradialis, well, we know it has to be somewhere thumb side because this is where our radius is. And if something mentions an ulna, we know that it's going to be pinky side because that's where our ulna is. So really pay attention to the names of these muscles as you're walking through. All right, so after our brachioradialis, its function is to flex the elbow. Let's go ahead and find our supinator. So we actually have to take this muscle group off to find our supinator, which is going to be right here. And as I'm sure you can guess, our supinator is going to supinate the forearm. We can also see a little bit more of it if we keep taking off some muscles. So we can see it from this view and from this view. Let's go ahead and put these muscles right back on our model. All right, so now that we've got our supinator down, we can find our flexor carpi radialis. And so something quick, just as a tip, if you see the name flexor and extensor and you're a little bit confused, let's go ahead and walk through something that might help. So this is going to be our posterior side of the arm. If it's on the posterior arm, it's more than likely going to be an extensor. If it's on the anterior side of the arm, it's more than likely going to be a flexor. So that's just something to help you kind of identify what's what when you're trying to list all these muscles. All right, so we're looking for our flexor carpi radialis. So we know flexor, all right, that's going to be on this side. Carpi, that's going to be our wrist. Radialis, that's going to be thumb side. And so for our flexor carpi radialis, we can actually see that it's going to be this muscle right here, flexor carpi radialis. And the function of the flexor carpi radialis is going to be to flex the wrist, or flex the carpi. Next, we're going to find our flexor carpi ulnaris, and it's going to have the same function of flexing the wrist. And this right here is going to be our flexor carpi ulnaris. Next, we're going to want to locate our palmaris longus, and that's going to be this muscle right here. And the function of the palmaris longus is going to be to anchor the skin of the palmar region. Next, we're going to want to find our flexor digitorum superficialis. Again, we're still talking flexor, so it's going to be on this side of the arm. So this right here, we can see it in two places, right here and right here. That is going to be our flexor digitorum superficialis. And the functions of that are going to be to flex the wrist and the digits. Next, we're going to look for our extensor carpi radialis longus. And so we're going to go on this side of the arm because, again, we're looking for an extensor. So extensor carpi radialis longus, that's going to be this muscle right here. Under that, we have our extensor carpi radialis brevis, which is going to be right here. And both of those function the same way to extend the wrist. Next, we're going to look at our extensor digitorum, which is going to be this muscle right here. Its function is to extend the wrist and the digits. And finally, we're going to look right here, and this is going to be our extensor carpi ulnaris, and its function is again to extend the wrist. All right, now we're going to look at the leg. And again, the very first thing we're going to want to do before we start naming muscles is going to be to identify bilateral symmetry. And so if we know that this is going to be lateral, and this is going to be medial, we can tell that this is going to be our left foot. And by consequence, this is going to be our left leg. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Starting up here, this is going to be our gluteus maximus. Its jobs are going to be to extend and abduct the thigh. Reflecting the gluteus maximus, we're going to have our gluteus medius, and that is going to be this muscle right here. And it's also going to abduct the thigh. And following the same function of abducting the thigh, we're going to have our gluteus minimus. It's going to be right here. And then if we flip our leg just a little, we can see this muscle right here, which is going to be our tensor fasciae latae. And its job is going to be to extend the knee. Moving a bit more, we're going to see our iliopsoas, which is going to be this muscle right here. If we take this off, we can see it a bit better. This is going to be our iliopsoas right there. And its function is going to be to flex the hip. All right. With that, we're going to move on to the anterior side of our leg. Here is going to be our rectus femoris. We're also going to have our vastus lateralis. And again, we know that this is going to be lateral, this is going to be medial. So we're going back up here, seeing our vastus lateralis. We're going to see our vastus medialis. And if we were to reflect the rectus femoris, we can see our vastus intermedius. And those four muscles, the rectus femoris, this right here, and then we're going to have our vastus lateralis and vastus intermedius and vastus medialis. Those are going to make up our quadriceps, and they all share the same function of extending the knee. So let's go ahead and pop this back on. All right. Next, we're going to look at our sartorius, which is going to be this muscle, just right here. And the sartorius' function is going to be to flex the hip and knee. Next, we're going to look at the adductor magnus, and its job is going to be to adduct the thigh. It's going to be right here. Next, we're going to look at our adductor longus. It's going to be right here, and its function is going to be to adduct the thigh as well. And we're also going to have our gracilis right here, and it shares the same function of adducting the thigh. Next, we're going to go toward the lower leg, and we are going to, we're going to look at the biceps femoris short and long head. And so we're gonna turn it right here. Now, you would think that these would be the biceps, but they're not. Pulled a trick on you. This is actually gonna be our biceps femoris long head, and then this right here is gonna be our biceps femoris short head. And again, this is gonna be our biceps femoris long head. This is gonna be your biceps femoris short head. We're also gonna look on this side at our semitendinosus and semimembranosus. So up top is gonna be our semitendinosus, T for top, and right under that, deep to that, is going to be our semimembranosus. So we can see semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and again on this side, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. And all those muscles, our biceps femoris and both semimembranosus and semitendinosus, are gonna share the same functions of flexing the knee, and that's also what is going to make up our hamstring group. So again, remember those muscles. Now moving down onto the lower leg, we can see our gastrocnemius, which is going to be this right here. And with our gastrocnemius, we're going to have our medial and lateral heads. And again, if we know that this is medial and this is lateral, because if we can see our big toe, our little toe right there, we know that this is going to be our medial head, and this is going to be our lateral head. And the function of the gastrocnemius is going to be plantar flexion. And right under that, deep to that, is going to be our soleus. And we can see it from either side. It's just that little bit right there. And the soleus is also going to have a role in plantar flexion. Going to the anterior side of the leg, we're going to have this right here. This is going to be our tibialis anterior. Again, because we're attaching to our tibia, and it's on the anterior side. And its function is going to be dorsiflexion and inversion of the foot. Next, we're going to look at our extensor digitorum longus, and it's going to extend the toes. And we can see that it actually goes out to all of these, and so we know that it's going to extend the digits. The next one we're going to look at is going to be our fibularis longus. And our fibularis longus is going to be this muscle right here. And its function is going to be plantar flexion and eversion of the foot. Additionally, another one of your objectives that you have to know is being able to identify the iliotibial band. And that is going to be this structure right here, running all the way down. All right, so next we're going to look at the muscles of the head and the neck. And with these muscles, there are certain models that show it better than others, and so I'm going to kind of switch back and forth between these two models to give you the best view of all the different muscles you have to learn. So starting us off, we're going to look at the frontalis. And for two of the muscles of the face, we actually don't need bilateral symmetry, but those are the only two muscles of the face that we do not need bilateral symmetry for. And that's going to be the frontalis up here and the orbicularis oris down here. But we'll get to that in a second. Keeping with the frontalis, that's going to be this one right here, and its function is going to be to elevate the eyebrows. Moving laterally, we're going to see our temporalis right here, and its function is going to be to elevate the mandible. Moving right here, we're going to see our orbicularis oculi, and its function is going to be to close the eye. And coming back to our orbicularis oris, that's going to be right here, and its function is going to be to purse the lips. Next, we're going to come to the masseter right here, and its function is going to be to elevate the mandible. And then we can see our risorius right here, although it might be better shown on this other model right here. We can have our risorius right there, and its function is going to be to draw an angle of the mouth laterally. And deep to the risorius, we're going to see our buccinator right here, and its function is going to be to compress the cheek. Now, next we're going to have our digastric muscles. There's an anterior and posterior belly for these. So looking on this model, we can see that this is going to be our anterior digastric. And this back here, this one right there, is going to be our posterior digastric. On this model, excuse me, it looks a little different, that this is going to be our anterior digastric, and this one right here is going to be our posterior digastric. And the functions of both of those muscles are going to be to depress the mandible. Next, we're going to look at our stylohyoid, and that is going to be this muscle right here, shown on this model. And for this model, it's going to be this muscle shown right there. So again, we have our anterior digastric, posterior digastric, and then our stylohyoid right there. Next, we're going to have, and also the stylohyoid, its function is going to be to elevate the hyoid. Next, our mylohyoid is going to elevate the floor of the mouth, and that's going to be this muscle right here that we can see on this model. And if you're looking on this model, it would be this muscle right there on either side. And its function is going to be to elevate the floor of the mouth. Next, we're going to have our sternohyoid muscle, and it's going to also depress the hyoid. And we cannot see it quite too well on that model, so let's go ahead and switch. This right here is going to be our sternohyoid muscle. And again, its job is going to be to depress the hyoid. Next, we're going to have our sternocleidomastoid, and that's going to be this muscle right here. Again, because that connects to the sternum, the clavicle, and the mastoid. A lot of the names of these muscles are going to help you try and figure out where they're at. And again, if we were to switch it to this model, this would be our sternocleidomastoid. And its job is going to be to rotate the head. Next, we're going to look at the scalenes, and that's going to be ipsilateral flexion of the head and neck. And so these right here are going to be our scalenes, right there. All right, now we're going to turn to looking at our trunk and the muscles associated with it. And again, remember to identify bilateral symmetry. To start us off, we're going to try and find our trapezius, which is going to be this muscle right here. And it's hard to see on this model because a lot of it has been removed to show the spine, but the function of the trapezius is going to be to extend the neck. Next, we're going to take a look at our pectoralis major, which is going to be this muscle right here, and its function is to flex and adduct the arm. Next, we're going to look at our serratus anterior, which is going to be these muscles right here, and their function are to protract the scapula. Next, we're going to look at our latissimus dorsi, which is going to be this muscle right here, and its function is going to be to extend and abduct the arm. Another good thing to know when we're looking at the torso model, we're going to see this right here, and this is actually going to be our infraspinatus muscle. Moving on to this one right here, this is actually going to be our teres major, and then this one up here is going to be our teres minor. And two other things we can see from this point of view is going to be our sternocleidomastoid up here, and additionally we can also see our diaphragm. If we were to remove this muscle, we can see that this is our diaphragm. All right, and looking a little bit lower, we can actually see a few more familiar muscles. To start us off, this muscle right here is going to be our gluteus maximus. This muscle would be our gluteus medius. And then this muscle right here would be our gluteus minimus. We can also see this muscle is going to be our tensor fasciae latae. And in addition to those muscles, we can also see our external oblique. And the function of the external oblique is going to be to compress the abdomen and to rotate the trunk. Next, we're going to look at our torso. So moving on, we can see this right here. This is again going to be our pectoralis major. But if we were to remove that, we can still see a little bit of it right here, but we're mostly looking at the muscles underneath. These muscles right here are going to be our pectoralis minor, and their function are to protract the scapula. Next, we can also see a lot more of our serratus anterior on this side right here, and we already know the functions of that. Moving on from that, we're going to be looking at our external and internal intercostal. Now, anything to do with costal means rib, and I'm going to need to zoom in just a little bit to show you the detail of this model. Especially when it comes to the intercostals, the way these fibers are going is going to be especially important in telling which one is which. So we can tell that our internal intercostals are going to be closer to the midline, and their fibers are going to be going this way. Our external intercostals are going to be more lateral, and their fibers are going this way. The functions of these muscles are going to be, for our external intercostals, it's going to be inspiration, and for our internal intercostals, it's going to be both inspiration and expiration. All right, zooming back out, we can also see this right here. That's going to be our rectus abdominis. The rectus abdominis functions to flex the waist, as in a sit-up. And then we also have these muscles right here. This is going to be our external oblique. And the function of the external oblique is going to be to compress the abdomen and rotate the trunk. If we were to also flip this model around, we can see a few more distinct muscles. The very first thing that we're going to want to look at is going to be this muscle right here. This is going to be our transverse abdominal, and the function of it is going to be to compress the abdomen. Again, we're going to zoom in just a little bit on this model and take a look at these muscles right here. So again, this is going to be our transverse abdominal right here. This right here, this muscle is now going to be our external oblique. And then this muscle right here, the one right in between, is going to be the internal oblique. And the function of the internal oblique is going to also be to compress the abdomen and to rotate the trunk. All right, so now that we have a good understanding of all of our muscles, let's go ahead and try and put it all together on one of these full body models. So to start us off, we're going to have our frontalis. We're also going to have our temporalis. We're going to have our orbicularis oculi, our orbicularis oris. We're also going to have our masseter, which is going to be this muscle right here. We're going to have our risorius. We're going to have our buccinator. And we're going to have our digastric. Let's see if I can show this. We're going to have our digastric, anterior and posterior bellies. Now this model might not be the greatest to be able to see both the stylohyoid as well as the digastric posterior belly, but we can do the best we can. So this would be our digastric posterior belly, and this would roughly be where our stylohyoid would be. Moving on from there, we can see our mylohyoid, which I'm going to pick it right back up. Our mylohyoid is going to be this muscle right here that we can see right there. And then we're also going to look for our sternohyoid, which is going to be this muscle set right here. And we're also going to look for our sternocleidomastoid, which is going to be this muscle on either side. And then we're also going to look for our scalings. And these are going to be our scalings. All right, looking at our back, we can see a couple different things. This is going to be a full view of our trapezius right here. We can also see more latissimus dorsi, which is going to be this right there. We can also get a much better view of our, let's see if I can turn around. We have our pectoralis major, rectus abdominis, external obliques, and we can also see our serratus anterior right there. Additionally, if we were to take off this chest plate, we can see our diaphragm even clearer on this model, and this right here would be our diaphragm. And even picking up this chest plate, we can see our transverse abdominal and a few other muscles, although this is not the best representation of them. We can also technically see some of our internal and external obliques as well, and we can see some of our intercostal muscles. But again, this is not the best representation of those muscles. All right, we're gonna look at the arms of the full body model now. Starting us off, we're going to look up here and see our deltoid. We can also see our infraspinatus right here, our teres minor, and our teres major. Moving on from that, we can go more toward our anterior side, and it's a bit hard to see, but we can see our coracobrachialis right up there. We can also see our brachialis from this point of view right here. This is going to be our brachialis, and we can also see our biceps brachii. This is going to be our biceps brachii long head, and this is going to be our biceps brachii short head. We're also going to see our triceps. I'm going to switch it over here to see our triceps. We can see our triceps brachii lateral head, long head, and medial head. And on this side, it would look like triceps brachii lateral head, long head, and medial head. Next, we're going to find our pronator teres, and if we flip right here, this is going to be our pronator teres. And we cannot see our supinator because it is deep and we can't reflect muscles on this model. Next, we're going to see our flexor carpi radialis. So flexor carpi radialis is going to be this muscle right here. That's going to be our flexor carpi radialis. Next, we're going to find our flexor carpi ulnaris, and that's going to be this muscle way back here. This one right there. That's going to be our flexor carpi ulnaris. Might be better to see from this side. This is going to be that muscle right there. Right there. All right, moving on from that, we're actually going to find our palmaris longus, which is going to be right here. That's going to be our palmaris longus. We're also going to see our flexor digitorum superficialis, which is going to be these in-between muscles right there that you can see. All right, so with our lower limbs, the very first thing we're going to see right here is going to be our gluteus maximus. Turning it a little bit, we can also see our iliotibial band that runs along right here, and under that would be our gluteus medius. Going a bit more anterior, we can see our tensor fasciae latae right here, and then we can also see our iliopsoas. Now our iliopsoas is going to be in this area right here. From that, we can also see our rectus femoris, which is going to be this muscle right here. We can also see our vastus medialis and our vastus lateralis, but we cannot see our vastus intermedius because it is deep to the rectus femoris. We can see our sartorius running along right there. And we can also see our adductor magnus, which is going to be on the back more right here. And it's a little difficult to see on this model. And from this view, we can also see our gracilis, which is going to be right there. And again, our gracilis right here. And then we can also see our adductor longus, which is going to be this right here. All right, and from that, we're gonna go back to this posterior view, and we're gonna see our biceps femoris right there. So we're gonna have our biceps femoris long head and our biceps femoris short head back there. We're also gonna see our semitendinosus right up here, and our semimembranosus down here. Again, semitendinosus would be right here, my bad, semitendinosus and semimembranosus. All right, we're also gonna see our gastrocnemius down here. We're gonna see our medial head, and then also our lateral head. And then with that, we're also gonna see our soleus. So again, I'm just trying a little bit to the side here. You hold a little bit more up, but this right here is gonna be our soleus. You can see it on either of those sides. You can also see it right there and right there. This is gonna be our soleus. Going more to the anterior, we're going to see our tibialis anterior, which is going to be this muscle right there. We're also going to see our extensor digitorum longus. And so our extensor digitorum longus is going to be this right here, or this one right here. And with that, we're also going to see our fibularis longus as our last muscle for the leg, and that is going to be this muscle right here on this side, and this muscle right here on this side. All right, let's go ahead and look at the muscles of the head and neck on this other full body model. Starting us out with the frontalis, that's gonna be up here. Temporalis, that's gonna be right here to the side. Orbicularis oculi, that's gonna be on either side of the face, either right here around the eye or right here. We're also gonna have our orbicularis oris, which is gonna be around the mouth. Our masseter, which is going to be this muscle right here. We're also going to have our risorius, but on this model it has been cut, but otherwise it would be right there. And we can also see our buccinator right there. We're also going to see, again, our digastric muscles. And so we're going to have to turn the model in a bit of precarious way, but this is going to be our anterior digastric. Back here, that's going to be our posterior digastric, if we can see, posterior digastric, and then right above that right here is going to be our stylohyoid. And it might be better on this side, but again, we're going to have our anterior digastric, our posterior, and our stylohyoid. From this angle, we can also see our mylohyoid right there on the bottom. And we can also see, let's set them back down, our sternohyoid, which is going to be this right there. And we can also see our sternocleidomastoid right there and here. And then if we turn ourselves a little bit right here, we can also see our scalings. All right, next we're going to look at this other full body model that we have to find the muscles of the arms on this. All right, let's start us off on the back of this model. We're going to find our infraspinatus, which is going to be this muscle right there. We're also going to find our teres minor, which is going to be these, and teres major right below that there. We're also going to find our deltoid, which is going to be these muscles up top. Moving on from that into this upward extending arm, we're going to find our coracobrachialis right there. We're also going to see our biceps brachii. If we just look right there, we're going to see our biceps brachii. This is going to be our long head, and this is going to be our short head. And we're also going to see our brachialis right here as well. Next, we're going to see our triceps brachii. This is going to be our triceps brachii lateral head, our long head, and then down here, we're going to see our medial head. And again, up here, it's going to be the triceps brachii lateral head, long head, and then we have our medial head right there. Moving on from that, we're going to find our pronator teres. So the pronator teres is going to be this muscle right here, or we can also see it on this arm right up there. After the pronator teres, we have our brachioradialis. So our brachioradialis is going to be this muscle right here. After the brachioradialis, we have our flexor carpi radialis. So we're going to turn around this arm right here, and this right here is going to be our flexor carpi radialis. We're also going to have our flexor carpi ulnaris. That's going to be this one right here. And then we're also going to have our palmaris longus, and that's going to be this muscle right here. And on this side, we can see our palmaris longus as this muscle going up just right there. We can also see our flexor digitorum superficialis, which is going to be this in-between muscle you see right there. That's going to be the, again, flexor digitorum superficialis. We're also going to have our extensor carpi radialis longus, and we're going to find that right here. This is going to be, again, that extensor carpi radialis longus, and then right below that, we're going to have our extensor carpi radialis brevis. All right, and then with that, we're also going to have our extensor digitorum. That's going to be this muscle right here. If we look on this side, our extensor digitorum would be this right up here. And then we're also going to have our extensor carpi ulnaris. And so our extensor carpi ulnaris is going to be this muscle right there. All right, to start us off, we're going to look at the posterior part of our leg. This is going to be our gluteus maximus right here, and a bit more lateral just right here. That's going to be our gluteus medius. And again, our IT band, our iliotibial band, is going to be what covers that. Going on more to the anterior side of the leg, we're going to find our tensor fasciae latae, which is this muscle right here. And if we were a bit more lateral, it would look just like this. We're also going to see our iliopsoas right here. And moving on, we're going to see our rectus femoris. That's going to be this muscle right here, and it would be this muscle right here on this side. We're also going to see our vastus lateralis. It'd be this muscle right here, or this muscle right here. And then we're also going to see our vastus medialis, which is going to be either this muscle or this muscle. Again, we cannot see our vastus intermedius because we'd have to reflect muscles on this model. We can also see our sartorius, which is going to be these muscles right there. We can also see our abductor magnus and abductor longus. So this right here is going to be our abductor longus, and more to the posterior side, this is going to be our abductor magnus. And in between those two, we can also see our gracilis. That's going to be this one right here. You can also see a little bit on this side and this side right there. It's going to be the gracilis. We can also see our biceps femoris. If we turn it back around, this right here is going to be our biceps femoris long head. This is going to be our biceps femoris short head right there, short head and long head. And on this side would be long head, and there's our short head. We can also see our semitendinosus. That's going to be right up here, this top one right there on either side. And then our semimembranosus is going to be right there and right there on both those legs. All right, moving on from there, we can see our gastrocnemius, which is going to be our calf muscles right here. We know our gastrocnemius lateral head and our gastrocnemius medial head, because it's toward the midline of the body. Moving on from there, we can see our soleus. We'd have to kind of pick it up a little bit. This is going to be our soleus. Again, it's directly under that gastrocnemius, so we have to kind of peek to the side to see our soleus. We're also going to see our tibialis anterior, which is going to be this muscle right there. That's going to be your tibialis anterior. We can also see our extensor digitorum longus. So our extensor digitorum longus is going to be this one right here, or this one right here. And then lastly, we can see our fibularis longus, and our fibularis longus is going to be this muscle right here and this muscle right here.